So, hello and welcome back to Ivanhoe, where we kind of forgot all about Rebecca in the last chapter because it was time for everyone to be unmasked? Question mark. That was an interesting chapter. Like from all of the drama of Rebecca, or is she Rebecca or is she Rachel? Rebecca. But from all the drama of her story, we just switched gears and went on a road trip with the boys. I don't know. That was a very odd tonal shift for me. And from like just skimming slash paging through at least the beginning of this, I don't think we're going to see Rebecca again for a while. We only have 3 chapters left of this book. I don't know how we're going to wrap it all up. Also, still waiting for the romance, fully cognizant of the fact that yes, I guess romance meant something different back then. Didn't seem very romantic to me, though. Anyway, we're going to read this chapter, but as always, we are starting off with some strange quote from probably a book I've never heard of or read, but that's okay. I am not an 18th century learned scholar man type person, so I guess it's okay that I don't know any of these sources or something. I hope you guys are all doing well. I hope you are enjoying the end of Ivanhoe and looking forward to the next one, which will start when I get back from my road trip. So let's just jump in and see what's going on, with the quote at least. All hail to the lordlings of high degree, who live not more happy, though greater than we. Our pastimes to see under every green tree, in all the gay woodland right welcome ye be. And that quote is from MacDonald. I mean, at least that was a happier quote than some of them have been, so yeah. Anyway, we're going to pick up right where we left off with people approaching good King Richard, Robin Hood, and Friar Tuck in chapter 41 of Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. The newcomers were Wilfrid of Ivanhoe on the Prior of Botolph's palfrey, and Gurth who attended him on the knight's war horse. The astonishment of Ivanhoe was beyond bounds when he saw his master besprinkled with blood and 6 or 7 dead bodies lying around in the little glade in which the battle had taken place. Nor was he less surprised to see Richard surrounded by so many sylvan attendants, the outlaws, as they seemed to be of the forest, and a perilous retinue for a prince. He hesitated whether to address the king as the Black Knight errant, or in what other manner to demean himself towards him. Richard noticed this. "Fear not, Wilfrid," he said, "to address Richard Plantagenet as himself, since you see him in the company of true English hearts, although they may have been urged a few steps aside by warm English blood." "Sir Wilfrid of Ivanhoe," said the gallant outlaw, stepping forward, "my assurances can add nothing to those of our sovereign, yet, let me say somewhat proudly, that of men who have suffered much, he hath not truer subjects than those who are now around him." "I don't doubt that, brave man," said Wilfrid, "since you are in the number, but what mean these marks of death and danger, these slain men, and the bloody armor of my prince?" "Treason. Treason has been with us, Ivanhoe," said the king. "But thanks to these brave men, treason has gotten its own reward. But now, I think you might be a traitor as well," said Richard. "A most disobedient traitor, for were not our orders positive that you should rest at the priory until your wound was healed?" It's healed," said Ivanhoe. "It is not of more consequence than the scratch of a bodkin." "But why, oh why, noble prince? Will you vex the hearts of your faithful servants and expose your life by lonely journeys and rash adventures as if it were of no more value than that of a mere knight errant, who has no interest on earth but what his lance and sword may procure for him? Hmm. And Richard Plantagenet, said the king, desires no more fame than his good lance and sword may get him. And Richard Plantagenet is prouder of achieving an adventure with only his good sword and good arm to speed than if he led to battle a host of 100,000 men. But your kingdom, my liege, said Ivanhoe, your kingdom is threatened with dissolution and civil war. Your subjects are menaced with every species of evil. If deprived of their sovereign in some of those dangers which is your daily pleasure to incur, and from which you have but this moment narrowly escaped, what happens then? Ha! My kingdom and my subjects, said Richard. I tell you, Sir Wilfrid, the best of them are most willing to repay my follies in kind. For example, my own very faithful servant, Wilfrid of Ivanhoe, will not obey my positive commands, and yet he reads his king a homily because he does not walk by his advice. Which of us has the most reason to scold the other? But forgive me, faithful Wilfrid. The time I have spent, and am yet to spend, in concealment is, as I explained to you at the Priory, necessary to give my friends and faithful nobles time to assemble their forces, that when my return is announced, I should then be able to subdue the meditated treason without even unsheathing a sword. Estoville and Bohun will not be strong enough to move forward to York for 24 hours. I need news of Salisbury from the south, and Beauchamp in Warwickshire, and Moulton and Percy to the north. The Chancellor must also make sure of London. Too soon of an appearance would subject me to dangers other than lance and sword, even though backed by the bold bow of Robin, or the quarterstaff of Friar Tuck, and the horn of Wamba. I might not be able to make it. Wilfrid of Ivanhoe bowed in submission, well knowing how vain it was to contend with the wild spirit of chivalry which so often impelled his master upon dangers which he might easily have avoided, or rather, which it was unpardonable in him to have sought out. Ivanhoe sighed, therefore, and he held his peace while Richard rejoiced at having silenced his counselor, even though his heart acknowledged the justice of the charge that Ivanhoe had brought against him, went on and spoke with Robin Hood. King of outlaws, he said, have you no refreshment to offer your brother sovereign? For these dead knaves have found me both tired and hungry. In truth, said Robin Hood, for I scorn to lie to your grace, our larder is chiefly supplied with... He stopped and looked embarrassed. With venison, I guess, said Richard. Better food at need there can be none, and truly if a king will not remain at home and kill his own game, I think he should not cry too loudly if he finds it killed to his hand. Well then, your grace, said Robin, if you will again honor us with your presence at one of Robin Hood's places of rendezvous, the venison won't be lacking, and some ale, as it may be a cup of joy, and perhaps even a cup of reasonably good wine. And so Robin Hood accordingly led the way, followed by the buxom monarch, more happily probably at this chance meeting with Robin Hood and his merry men than he would have been again, assuming his royal state, and presiding over a splendid circle of his peers and nobles. Novelty in friendship and adventure is the zest of life for Richard Coeur de Lion, and it had its highest relish when enhanced by dangers encountered and surpassed. In The Lion-Hearted King, the brilliant but useless character of a knight of romance was, in a great measure, realized and revived, and the personal glory which he acquired by his own feats of arms was far more dear to his excited imagination than that which a course of policy and wisdom would have spread around his government. Accordingly, his reign was like the course of a brilliant, rapid meteor which shoots along the face of heaven, shedding around an unnecessary portent's light, which is instantly swallowed up by universal darkness. His feats of chivalry, furnishing themes for bards and minstrels, but affording none of those solid benefits to his country which history loves to pause on and hold up as an example to posterity. But in his present company, Richard showed to the greatest advantage. He was happy, good humored, and fond of manhood in every rank of life. Beneath a huge oak tree, the repast was hastily prepared for the King of England, surrounded by men, outlaws to his government, but who now seemed to form his court and his honor guard. As the flagon went round, the rough foresters soon lost their awe for the presence of majesty, and the song and jests were exchanged, the stories of former deeds were told with advantage and at great length, and while the boasting of their successful infractions of the laws went on, no one remembered that they were speaking in the presence of their king. The merry king, not heeding his dignity any more than that of the people around him, laughed and quaffed and jested with the jolly band. The natural and rough sense of Robin Hood led him to be desirous that the scene should be closed before anything happened to disturb its harmony, more especially since he observed Ivanhoe's brow clouded with anxiety. "We're honored," said Robin to Ivanhoe, "by the presence of our gallant sovereign, yet I would not that he dallied with time which the circumstances of his kingdom might render as precious." "That was well and wisely spoken, brave Robin Hood," said Wilfred as they went apart. "And know that they who jest with kings, even in his happiest mood, are but toying with the lion's whelp, who on slight provocation could use both fangs and claws on them." "You've touched on my worry," said Robin Hood. "My men are rough, by practice and nature. The king is hasty, as well as good-humored, and I do not know how soon cause of offense might happen, or how it might be received. It's time for this party to end." "It has to be on your terms, gallant yeoman," said Ivanhoe, "for each hint that I have tried to give him serves only to induce him to prolong the party." "Must I so soon risk the pardon in favor of my king?" said Robin Hood. He paused. "By Saint Christopher, it will be so. I am undeserving his grace, were I not risking peril for his own good. Here, Scathlock, get behind yonder thicket, and blow a Norman blast on your bugle. Do it without an instant's delay." Scathlock obeyed his captain, and in less than 5 minutes the revelers were startled by the sound of a horn. "It's the bugle of Malvision," said the miller, jumping to his feet and grabbing his bow. Friar Tuck dropped his flagon and grabbed his quarterstaff, and Wamba stopped in the midst of a jest and grabbed his sword and his shield. Everyone stood up and grabbed their weapons. Men, in their precarious course of life, change readily from banquet to battle, and to Richard the exchange seemed but a succession of more pleasure. He called for his helmet and the most cumbrous parts of his armor, which he had laid aside, And while Gurth was buckling them on, he laid his injunctions on Wilfrid, under pain of his highest displeasure, not to engage in the skirmish which he was supposing was approaching. "You fought for me 100 times, Wilfrid, and I have seen it. So on this day you will look on and see how Richard fights for his friend and liegeman. Liegeman? In the meantime, Robin Hood had sent off several of his followers in different directions, as if to reconnoiter the enemy. And when he saw the company effectively broken up, he approached Richard, who was now fully armed, and kneeling on one knee, asked for pardon from his sovereign. "For what, yeoman?" said Richard, somewhat impatiently. "Have I not already granted you a full pardon for all of your transgressions? Do you think our word is as a feather to be blown back and forth between us? You cannot have had time to commit any new offenses since the last time I spoke." "But I have," said Robin, "if it be an offense to deceive my prince for his own good. The bugle that you heard was not Malvision's, but blown by my direction to stop the banquet, lest it trenched upon hours of dearer import than thus to be dallied with." Robin then rose from his knee and folded his arms, and in a manner rather respectful, but not submissive, waited on the answer of the king, like one who knows that he may have given offense, yet is confident in his motives. Blood rushed in anger to Richard's face, but it was the first transient emotion, and his sense of justice instantly subdued it. "The King of Sherwood," said Richard, "grudges his venison and his wine flask to the King of England. It's good, bold Robin. But when you come to see me in merry London, I will be a better host. You are right, however, good fellow. Let us therefore beat a horse and away. Wilfrid has been impatient this last hour. Tell me, Robin, do you never have a friend in your band who, not content with merely advising, needs to direct your motions and then look miserable when you presume to act on your own?" "I do," said Robin. "That's my lieutenant, Little John, who is even now absent on an expedition as far as the borders of Scotland, and I will own to your majesty that I am sometimes displeased by the freedom of his counsel, but when I stop to think, I cannot very long be angry with one who can have no motive for his anxiety except for zeal." "You're right," said King Richard. "And if I had Ivanhoe on the one hand to give advice, and recommend it by the sad gravity of his brow, then and you on the other, to trick me into what you think is for my own good, I should have as little freedom of my own as any king in Christendom. But come, let us merrily go on to Coinsborough, and not think about this any more." Robin Hood assured him that he had sent a party in the direction of the road that they were to go on, who would not fail to discover and let them know of any secret ambushes, and that he had little doubt that they would find their way secure, or, if not, that they would receive such timely notice of danger that would enable them to fall back upon a strong troop of archers, with which he himself proposed to follow on the same route with. The wise and attentive precautions adopted for his safety touched Richard's feelings, and they removed any grudge which might stay on account of the deception that the outlaw captain had practiced upon him. He once again extended his hand to Robin Hood, and assured him of his full pardon in future favor, as well as his firm resolution to restrain the tyrannical exercise of the forest rights and other oppressive laws by which so many Englishmen were driven into a state of rebellion. But Richard's good intentions towards the bold outlaw were frustrated by his untimely death, and the charter of the forest was extorted from the unwilling hands of King John when he followed his heroic brother. As for the rest of Robin Hood's career, as well as the tale of his treacherous death, well, those are to be found in those black letter garlands once sold at the low and easy rate of a halfpenny. Now they're chiefly purchased at their weight in gold. Robin Hood's opinion proved true, though, and the king, attended by Ivanhoe, Gurth, and Wamba, arrived with any interruption into the view of the castle at Coinsborough while the sun was still in the horizon. There are few more beautiful or striking scenes in England than are presented by the vicality of this ancient Saxon fortress. The soft, gentle river Don sweeps through an amphitheater in which cultivation is richly blended with woodland, and on a mount ascending from the river, well defended by walls and ditches, rises this ancient edifice, which, as its Saxon name implies, was previous to the conquest a royal residence of kings of England. The outer walls have probably been added by the Normans, but the inner keep bears a token of great antiquity. It is situated on a mount at one angle of the inner court and forms a complete circle of perhaps 25 feet in diameter. The wall is of immense thickness and is propped or defended by 6 external buttresses, which project from that circle and rise up again at the sides of the tower as if to support it. These massive buttresses are solid when they arise from the foundation and a good way higher up, but they're hollowed out towards the top and terminate in a sort of turret communicating with the interior of the keep itself. The distant appearance of this huge building with these singular accompaniments is as interesting to the lovers of the picturesque as the interior of the castle is to an eager antiquarian whose imagination carries back to the days of Heptarchy. A barrow in the vicinity of the castle is pointed out as the tomb of the memorable Hengst, and in various monuments of great antiquity and curiosity are shown in the neighboring churchyard. When Coeur de Lion and his retinue approached this rude yet stately building, it was not, as present, surrounded by external fortifications. The Saxon architect had exhausted his art in rendering the main keep defensible, and there was no other circumvallation other than a rude barrier of palisades. A huge black banner, which floated from the top of the tower, announced the obsequies of the late owner were still in the art of being solemnized. These are words. They definitely are words. It bore no emblem of the deceased's birth or quality, for armorial bearings were then a novelty among the Norman chivalry themselves and totally unknown to the Saxons. But up above the gate was another banner, on which the figure of a white horse, rudely painted, indicated the nation and rank of the deceased by the well-known symbol of Hengst and his Saxon warriors. All around the castle was a scene of busy commotion, for such funeral banquets were times of general and profuse hospitality, which not only everyone who could claim even the most distant connection with the deceased, but all passengers whatsoever were invited to come in and partake. The wealth and consequence of the dead Athelstine occasioned this custom to be observed to the very fullest extent. Numerous parties, therefore, were seen ascending and descending the hill on which the castle was situated, and when the king and his attendants entered the open, unguarded gates of the external barrier, the space within presented a scene not easily reconciled with the cause of the assembly. In one place, cooks were toiling to roast a huge ox and some fat sheep. In another, hogsheads of ale were set open to be drained at the freedom of all comers. Groups of every description were to be seen eating food and drinking the litter and abandoning their discretion. The naked Saxton serf was drowning the sense of his half year's hunger and thirst in one day of gluttony and drunkenness. The more pampered bourgeoisie and guild brother were eating his morsel with gusto, or curiously critiquing the quality of the malt and the skill of the brewer. Some few of the poorer Norman gentry might also be seen, distinguished by their shaven chins and their short cloaks, and not less so by them keeping together and looking with scorn on the whole affair, even while condescending to avail themselves of the good cheer which was being so liberally supplied. Mendicants were, of course, assembled by the score, together with strolling soldiers returned from Palestine, according to what they said of at least. Peddlers were displaying their wares, traveling mechanics were asking for employment, and wandering palmers, hedge priests, Saxon minstrels, and Welsh bards were seen muttering prayers and extracting mistuned dirges from their harps. One set forth the praises of Athelstine in a doleful song. Another, a Saxon genealogical poem rehearsed by the uncouth and harsh names of his noble ancestry. Jesters and jugglers were not a wanting, nor was the occasion of the assembly supposed to render the exercise of their professional or of their profession indecorous or improper. Indeed, the ideas of the Saxons upon these occasions were as natural as they were rude. If sorrow was thirsty, well, there was drink. If sorrow was hungry, there was food. If it sunk down upon and saddened the heart, here were the means of mirth, or at least amusement. Nor did the assistants scorn to avail themselves of those means of consolation, although every now and then, as if suddenly remembering the cause that had brought them all together, the men would moan in unison, while the females, of whom there were many present, raised up their voices and shrieked for woe. This was the scene in the castle yard at Coinsborough, when it was entered by Richard and his followers. The seneschal, or the steward, deigned not to take notice of the groups of inferior guests who were perpetually entering and leaving, unless it was necessary to preserve order. None the less, he was struck by the monarch and Ivanhoe, more especially as he imagined the features of the latter seemed familiar to him. Besides the approach of the two knights, for that's what their dress named them as, it was rare at a Saxon funeral, and it could not but be regarded as a sort of honor to the dead and his family. And in his black dress and holding in his hand the white wand of office, this important seneschal made his way through the miscellaneous assembly of guests and conducted Richard and Ivanhoe to the entrance of the tower. Girth and Wampa speedily found friends in the courtyard, and did not presume to intrude themselves any farther until they were sent for. And that, which we're going to call Road Trip Part 2, is the end of the chapter. Yep, we've totally forgotten Rebecca. I'm assuming that now that we're at this funeral, with all sorts of big words that I don't know if I pronounced correctly, that we're going to meet up with Cedric and maybe Rowena, who we have completely forgotten about. Even I forgot about Rowena. And see what is going on. I also like how, in the middle of talking about Richard and the fact that, in the book anyway, he's not even actually crowned king yet, I don't think. We're talking about how quickly and brightly his kingship burned out. I mean, way to foreshadow there, Sir Walter Scott. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that road trip chapter. I do like Robin Hood being like, okay, this party's going on a little bit too long, and I'm really hoping that the king doesn't get pissed at me, but we got to break this party up. I liked that. Anyway, thank you as always, and I will see you later.